surgery all went well, but yeah, it was quite a I guess tough time for the family. Like I was 7, so I don't remember too much of it. But just from some of the stories and everything that my parents told me, like even afterwards, like in the lead up to the surgery, the doctors at the time actually said, look, it's just strange things happen. We've never seen it before, but the blockage is actually gone. And they're like, look, it could still be there. It could just be a faulty reading, whatever. And they gave my parents the option if they wanted to go ahead with the surgery or not. And I'm very thankful for my parents, as I couldn't imagine how tough of a decision that would have been for them. But very thankfully they decided to go ahead with it, because they're like, look, we've gone this far with it. We may as well go ahead. And
Yeah.
luckily they did, because afterwards they said, oh, look, the reason why we couldn't see it is because it had completely blocked the artery. And so they basically said that I wouldn't have any more than probably 2 weeks if they didn't go ahead with it. So yeah, so very, very thankful. And when you look at it back at it now, it's would have been.
I got goosebumps. Shit.
Yeah, so
that's insane.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Julian Fayad. I'm the CEO and founder of LoanOptions.ai. And today I'm here with a very special guest, a very fast guest.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. It's Aaron Borg here. I'm driver of the #1 AC Delco V8 SuperUte. We race around the country with the V8 supercars, and yeah, so looking forward to spending some time with you.
Yeah, so you've been to our office before, and I'm sure you've seen we're car nuts in our office, and we did the track day, and that's kind of how we got connected initially. And watching you, really is very impressive. And most recently, clean sweep four races, which has never been done before in the V8 SuperUtes, which is awesome, man. So congratulations! You're going really well. You're a defending champion too. So. But yeah, I've seen bits and pieces, and then I heard your story, and obviously introduced through Valerie, who we love and adore in our office, and I thought we had to have this chat. So let's go back. Let's start from the very beginning. How did you get the bug, so to speak? How did you get addicted to racing and motors? Is that something that was passed on, or let's start there, and then I'd love to hear more about your life story.
Yeah, definitely. So my love for racing started way back, probably as soon as I was born. My family's pretty motorsport nut. So my dad, I sort of grew up around it. My dad used to race go-karts. So sort of not just your hire karts, but sort of around Australia, raced competitive in go-karts. And that's sort of what sparked my interest. I've always, for as long as I can remember, been watching Formula 1, V8 supercars, all of them. And yeah, so I was basically brought up around it. In terms of getting into it, I actually started when I was 10 years old. So normally you can actually get into it when you're 7, which is quite young, obviously. And we were obviously, because I've grown up around it and my dad was involved in it, we wanted to get into it when I was 7, but I was actually born with a very, very bad heart condition called subaortic stenosis. And basically what that is one of the main arteries within the heart is born with, it basically has a growth in there. So it's a muscle growth that I was born with, and then as I got older and older, it just progressively got worse and worse. And when I say worse, got bigger and bigger, and slowly started blocking the artery more and more. And so by the time I was about 6 years old, they said to my parents, look, we're going to have to operate. And then by the time we in and out of hospital quite a bit through my younger years, and then by the time I turned 7, I was in for open heart surgery. So
that's insane.
Yeah. So it's surgery all went well, but it was quite a I guess tough time for the family. Like I was 7, so I don't remember too much of it. But just from some of the stories and everything that my parents told me, like even afterwards, like in the lead up to the surgery, the doctors at the time actually said, look, it's just strange things happen. We've never seen it before, but the blockage is actually gone. And they're like, look, it could still be there. It could just be a faulty reading, whatever. And they gave my parents the option if they wanted to go ahead with the surgery or not. And I'm very thankful for my parents, as I couldn't imagine how tough of a decision that would have been for them. But very thankfully they decided to go ahead with it, because they're like, look, we've gone this far with it. We may as well go ahead. And luckily they did, because afterwards they said, oh, look, the reason why we couldn't see it is because it had completely blocked the artery. And so they basically said that I wouldn't have any more than probably 2 weeks if they didn't go ahead with it. So so very, very thankful. And when you look at back at it now, it's would have been.
I got goosebumps. Shit.
Yeah, so
that's insane.
Yeah. So very, very tough decision for my parents, but very thankful for everything that they've done.
Makes you wonder like how they came to that conclusion, right? Like everything happened obviously for a reason, and I'm sure you weren't doing much racing after the surgery. Thankfully, everything went well. But as a parent, like I got a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, and the thought of like they get a cold and I get upset. You know what I mean? I can't imagine what they were going through. And thank God they made the right decision to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so. Yeah, so that was very thankful. We then, after the surgery, I was still in and out of hospital for quite a bit. And going back to the race stuff, when I think I was about 9, going on to 10, we went to the doctors, and we were always going back and forth to the doctors, but we finally thought, all right, it's now time to see if we can go racing, because I was bugging my parents the whole time. I'm like, I'm all good now, I'm all good. Because before I had the surgery, I couldn't walk more than probably 20 meters in the school playground without being out of breath, without all of that. And so the thought of racing had never really come across my parents' mind. They're just like, well, it's never going to be possible, because if you can't walk from here to there without losing breath, you're never going to be able to race a kart. Something where your heart rate gets elevated and all the rest of it. And so,
and not just that, I think if you haven't at this point it's karts, right? But if you haven't raced karts, like competitive ones, I'm not talking about the ones you go and you move 5Ks an hour around a track. Yeah. If you haven't raced a kart that's set up for racing, you don't realize how much physical exertion it actually is. The steering's tight, your forearms get really jacked up, you're going over bumps, you're wearing a full suit, which is not the greatest if you're trying to stay cool. So if it's on a hot day, you can get heat stroke, you can get hypothermia, you can you're just overheating, and it's very intense. You're on edge, you're trying to get the apex, so how did you kind of get it? Tell me.
Like I said, because of all of that, it sort of never really crossed our mind that I'd be able to race, even though in my mind I was always like, yep, I'm going to race, I'm going to race, I'm going to race. And so, that's why when I was close to 10 years old, we started getting to the point where I was like, oh, look, I can run around, and I was showing my parents, I can do all this. I'm not out of breath. I'm all good now. I'm all good. And so that's then when we went to the doctors. We actually went through, it's probably a story I shouldn't tell, but we actually went through a few different doctors trying to get approval to race, because we needed the doctors to give us the green tick. When we went to the third one, we actually got around it in a little bit of a way back then, because he asked the question, he's like, are they the go-karts, are they the things that you push down the hill? And then straight away I was like, yeah, they're the ones. And I'm this little 10-year-old kid just saying, yeah, that's it. And I just remember my mum looking over me like, okay. Then they just went along with it. And then, we got the approval. And then, we ended up telling him what it actually was. And he was like, okay. He's like, that's still all good. He's like, all we need to do is just monitor it, make sure everything's okay. So we ended up going through it the proper way. And when I was 10, I was able to, hop into my first go-kart and go from there.
So you go go-karting, and you become quite successful at karting. What is the thing that made you transition then? Like, was it just a natural progression, or was it like, this is, I'm ready for the next level? Or like, how does the pathway look for a young kid who might want to listen to this, or maybe parents at home listening to this and then thinking how to get their kids involved in motorsport? What does the pathway from karts to cars look like?
So the pathway in motorsport is quite quite different to most other sports. So as you said, started in karting. Actually, we did become quite successful, but I remember my first time sitting in a go-kart. I actually stopped out on the track because I was going that slow, and they didn't have clutches or anything back then. So yeah, it wasn't quite smooth all from the start, but we eventually got pretty good at it.
So you weren't a natural?
Well, not straight away, no. So, but yeah, we worked at it, and then eventually got quite successful. We won a few state championships and a few national championships. Got to race overseas. I got offered to race in Japan and also in Vegas as well. So
wow.
That was some pretty cool events, and not very often you get to represent your country.
How old were you then?
When we went to Japan, I think I was 17 or 18.
Okay.
And a few years later.
You weren't 21 when you went to Vegas, were you?
No, not quite.
Unlucky.
So that was pretty cool being able to do those big events. And then how the progression works. Look, a lot of it comes down to funding. I was quite fortunate that I aligned myself with a guy who was racing V8 Utes at the time. His name was Andrew Fisher, and I was working with him a little bit in the background. And he actually helped get me into the car racing. So he saw what I was doing in go-karts and knew that obviously I wanted to progress into cars. And he actually gave me my first shot at a V8 Ute round up in Darwin. And so that was like being thrown into the deep end, because normally you have to go through a process where from go-karts to cars, you have to go through a process where you need to do some slower cars first and then sort of go up the ladder. But I was very fortunate because we were quite good in go-karts. They gave me special approval to go straight into it. And
wow.
So my first race was in a V8 Ute up at Darwin with 34 other cars around me. And
how hot was it?
It was very hot. That was the other thing, is you go from a go-kart where you've got obviously the air all around you, you're not enclosed in anything, to now a V8 Ute, which is enclosed, windows up. It got, I think it was like 35 to 40 degrees air temp, which made the cabin, so inside the car,
even
the temperature
hotter.
was over 50 degrees. So it was, being thrown straight into it with
wow.
massive heat, all the rest of it. Because like you said, it's not just the heat, it's not just that it's over 50 degrees, but you've also got your race suit on, you got your helmet on, you've got balaclava on, you got 3 layers underneath for all the, just in case obviously fires and all the rest of it. So you're fully covered up, and it was quite an experience to be thrown straight into it like that.
Story. The reason I know that is I've obviously been car and racing nut for since I was a kid. My father, my uncle, like all of them, they were right into it. So my older brother was too. But when I got older, I never really had the luxury of owning a go-kart or anything like that. So really it was just whenever we would, like, say on a birthday or something, what do you want to do? I want to go karting or something, right? So just the recreational style. But then as I got older and started making my own money and things like that, and my brother as well, we'd go go-karting more frequently. And then eventually he bought a Rotax go-kart.
Oh, nice.
And
that's cool.
And I remember it was like a 40-degree day.
Yeah.
And we're at Butterfly Farm. It's a small track in Windsor. And I was wearing the full race suit, and just like we're competing with each other so you can post the fastest laps, full into it. I get out of the cart when I'm done my round, and I stood up, like got out, stood up. It's like tight, squashy, your back's hurting, everything, because the seat's hard and it's so bumpy. And then, I kind of just like lost my legs, like as in, oh really, like just completely. And I was overheating basically.
Yeah, wow.
So I just like didn't completely collapse because my brother was there, but my legs just went out from under me. I just I didn't know what was going on. I was overheating, and then like after I took everything off and opened the suit, and I just felt like I could breathe again. So wow. I can't imagine like if that's on a cart on a 40-degree day. You have a vehicle that's no windows, no aircon. You don't have the luxury of all of the creature comforts. And then obviously the cabin temperatures are hot because you're not getting that air coming through. It would be crazy.
It's crazy. Like a lot of people don't experience, I guess, the way that you've experienced it. So it's when you say it, they're like, oh yeah, it's not so bad. But the fact that you've experienced, obviously you understand
Yeah,
that.
it was
that
worst
side of
feeling.
it as well.
Worst feeling. It was. I was
yeah.
nauseous. I was like, I was like,
Yeah.
like,
So we do a lot of training actually with it. So I spend time in the sauna. So one of my sponsors actually is City Cave, and they've got saunas and everything.
Love City Cave.
Yeah,
There's one up the road here.
Yeah. So they're great. They're obviously opened up around everywhere. So I often go into there several times before race meets and just sort of get myself acclimatized to the heat and whatnot. And so it's just little things like that the more you can, I guess, put yourself in that environment where it's over 50 degrees. So sometimes it gets even hotter, but if you can put yourself in that environment, get your body used to it, then you kind of, in a way, get used to it. It still always affects you a little bit, but if your body's more acclimatized to it, then makes a big difference when you get into the racing as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's like anything, right? And even when you were recovering from your heart surgery, you could only walk from here to there getting puffed. But as you train and you start running a little bit more, walking a little bit more, it's like you build up that. It's like training a muscle. If you haven't trained leg day for a long time, it hurts. So I think it's the same thing there.
Yeah,
if you're in the heat, you definitely get better at managing it. It's even sporting teams. Typically if they're going to be heading into enemy territory where it's going to be really hot or really cold, they go early to acclimatize. Like, if you're going to play the Canberra Raiders in the middle of winter in Canberra, you better get there a few days early.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Can't feel your hands, can't catch a ball because your fingers aren't working.
Yeah, exactly.
All of it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you if it's okay.
Yeah.
So you went through this whole thing, this whole ordeal as a kid, and then you're getting back on your feet, and your health and everything is looking good. You start racing the karts and stuff. Like, what were the check-ins like? And have you had any issues since then? Is this an ongoing thing, or is it seem to be all clear now?
Yeah. So I used to, at the very start, I had to get checked probably once a month. This is way back just after the surgery. Then it moved on to probably once every 2 months, then once every 6 months. By the time I was about probably 17 or 18, it was once every year. And since then, it's been once a year. So it still hasn't come back, but I still have to get checked every single year. One, because they want to keep an eye on it, but two, for my racing side of it, I need to make sure that everything's functioning well with the heart. Because obviously in a car, I don't know if you know, but basically when you're in the car, because of adrenaline, everything like that, and also everything because of how fast you're going and everything, your heart rate inside the car actually gets quite high for the whole time that we're out there. So my heart rate while I'm on track will be anywhere between 160 to 180 for the entire time.
Wow. That's higher than I even thought. That's insane. That's like nearly sprint, like that's nearly sprinting level heart rate.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that because our hearts are in such an environment, that combined with the heat, combined with everything else, they just want to keep checking it, make sure that I'm all good. And so I need to get that all signed off before obviously we can get my license renewed for every year. But it's also, they keep checking it because they basically said, look, because of it is a growth, they said if it does come back, then when it comes back, it'll come back quite aggressively. So they just want to keep an eye on it so that they can see any small symptoms if it does come back. But yeah, thankfully the surgeons and everyone who looked after me back when I was 7 years old did a great job, and we haven't had any issues since.
I know you do a lot of work with the Starlight Foundation. Is that because of like everything you went through? Is obviously that's a great cause, full stop, right? It doesn't matter. Like Starlight Foundation is a cause I've supported in the past. Yeah. And I didn't have any open heart surgery or anything like of that nature, anything serious when I was a kid. Probably in hospital maybe twice in my life. Yeah. So I've been very lucky. Is that part of it, or? Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, I don't remember a whole heap from back then. I think, I don't know if it's just mentally I blocked it out or just because it was so long ago, but I don't remember a whole heap. But one of the big things I do remember from my time, from all the times I was in and out of hospital, was the Starlight Children's Foundation and how much they helped me, I guess, get through that time. And so they've got, one of the big things that I remember about Starlight is they've got a room at the hospitals called Starlight Express Room. And basically
it's a big room where they've got a whole bunch of, showing my age here, when I was there, they had a whole bunch of Nintendo 64s. They had some like play pens for the younger kids, and
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, different things. So one of the biggest memories that I've got is actually playing Mario Kart on the Nintendo 64, and with my other friends that I made while I was in hospital. You sort of you make friends, but everyone's sort of in and out and all the rest of it. So it's a different friend every day. But I just remember getting on that while I was in there, and it's just one of the things that it's such a memory that sticks with me, that I want it to, when I got into a position where I can actually give back and make a difference, I want it to be able to do that. And so we're now doing a lot. I'm ambassador for the Starlight Children's Foundation. We get families who have what they call Starlight Wishes come out to the racetrack with us. So every round we've had a different family that's in that local area. So quite fortunate that we race all around Australia. So we're able to help different people who might not necessarily always get that opportunity. And seeing the kids come out, you know what they're going through, and seeing the smile on their face, being able to, we let them sit in the race car and take some photos, and just experiencing the whole event is very, very cool to be able to give that back to them.
Mate, that's very admirable, and thank you for doing that. That's an amazing cause and an amazing thing you're doing. Like that sort of thing, like you can only imagine, would just change those kids' life, you know, no matter what they're going through. Yeah. That's something they'll be able to cherish. So, I think that's awesome. And it's, I can tell when you speak about it, you're speaking about it with a lot of like love, and, you know, it's genuine. It's not just to tick a box to say, I'm a good guy. I you know, do charitable things. It's like, it comes across as though you're really passionate about that and you've chosen that. So, but that's, like I said, that's amazing. I want to ask you, like, so your first race is in Darwin, and it's deep end, quite literally. Hot day, you know, very powerful car going from a go-kart to a V8 rear-wheel drive. So how did you do in that? And then, like, after that, what was the process like to you know, essentially become where you're at today, which you know, you're like, you guys tour with the V8 supercars. You're effectively, you know, the feeder club for the V8 supercars, right? So, correct. Like, you've achieved so much, still very young, got a lot left to give, and but what's that journey like? That next block?
So starting at Darwin, it was my first race in it. I didn't qualify the best. I qualified 20th out of 30. I think there was 34 on that one. But I was able to make my way through. I ended up finishing 10th for the round, which we were pretty happy with. I was the first. They have what they call a rookie championship, which is basically anyone who's in their first year of that category is part of that. And so I was the leading rookie driver, which was pretty cool. So I got myself a little trophy for it and everything, which is always cool. So so that was that race. I didn't race for another complete year after that. Just basically trying to get budget. It's, as I mentioned before, it all comes down to bringing in budget, bringing sponsorship with you to the race teams. A year later, I actually got the opportunity to race again, but this time at Bathurst. So my second ever car race in a V8 at Bathurst. So you can imagine, as I'm lining up on the grid there and driving up the mountain, it was quite daunting, to say the least. Again, though, we had a really good weekend. I think that one I finished just outside the top 10. I think I finished 11th. Then again, I waited another whole year. This time back at Bathurst in a V8 Ute again. And this time we done quite well. This time I ended up finishing third in one of the races. And for my third ever car race, being at Bathurst and being able to do that in one of the main series was very, very cool. And it actually opened up the doors to some big opportunities. And so that basically led it to the team that I was racing with. They were also racing in Toyota 86s at the time. And they offered me a drive with them for the following year to do the entire season. So we ended up doing the year in 86s. That was my first year. Ended up finishing 7th in the year. So it was an okay first year. I then took 2018 off. I was getting married and trying to come up with a budget while juggling all of that. Trying to work out with
weddings
sponsors.
Are expensive, man.
So trying to do all of that at the same time as working with sponsors and everything, we decided it's probably best to just take the year off. Then I came back 2019 into the Toyota 86s again. Got some sponsorship together for that, and yeah, we had a great year. We ended up winning at Bathurst, winning at Sandown, and then ended up ultimately winning the championship as well. So that kind of kick-started everything else from then, and sort of been racing ever since, just different opportunities coming up. I raced Toyotas because that was in 2019, and basically the following year I was meant to be moving into supercars, so into Super 2, which is their development series.
Yeah.
Had all the sponsorship lined up, everything like that, and then unfortunately
COVID.
that was when COVID hit. And obviously not only took some businesses out, but it also just made sport, as I'm sure you know, sports just came to a complete halt. And so it just put our plans on the back burner. By the time racing got going again in 2020, it was later in the year. And my sponsors had unfortunately been victim of some COVID issues. Basically their business was heavily affected, and so they couldn't support us in the supercars that year. So I ended up getting a drive in the 86s again. It was just a one-off drive at Bathurst, which we ended up winning again, which was cool.
That's cool.
So it was good to be able to come back and still be winning. And then from that, sort of been trying to get back into that supercar opportunity. We ended up getting an opportunity to race V8 SuperUtes.
Yep.
That was in 2021. And so, yeah, we did the full season that year. I was leading right up until pretty much the very last race, where me and the guy that I was racing against, we'd been racing hard all year. I was at Bathurst, and yeah, he's basically just driven into me, hit me, and then I ended up in the wall and out of the race. And so that stopped us from winning the championship. But we ended up finishing second, I believe it was, still for the year. And then, yeah, got to do it again the following year, which was last year, so 2022. And yeah, we had a great year. We ended up winning a lot of races and ultimately winning the championship. So
yeah,
it was very cool.
Could have got championship 21. You got the championship in 22.
Yeah,
and knock on wood, looking pretty good so far for 23.
Yeah,
has that ever been done? The three-peat?
I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, I'd have to have a look. But
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because I found out that I was one of the only ones to win national championships in two different categories. So winning it in the Toyota 86 series and then winning it in the V8 SuperUtes, is not many people have done it in different categories before. So that was pretty cool. And then, yeah, because we won that and obviously everything else we had done, I'd been picked up by a main V8 Supercars series team. And so we actually got to test in their main supercar at the end of the year. And yeah, that was very, very cool experience. It's one thing that I always make sure that I'm very grateful for the things that I've done, because especially from where I started with obviously almost not even getting past 7 years old, to be where I am now and to have the opportunity to even just drive and do what I do is pretty cool. And then to be able to drive a supercar around the track was pretty amazing too. So obviously I'm pushing to try and get into that next step and get all the sponsorship and everything together for that. But for me, it's about being grateful for the opportunities that we've got. Like, not many people get to do what I'm doing currently. And when I look back to where I was at 7 years old with the open heart surgery and everything like that, to be here and be able to sit here with yourself talking about the cool things that we've been able to do is pretty special. And yeah, something that I'm extremely grateful for.
Mate, the level of gratitude I can see that you have is awesome. And, what's that? Let's talk about the V8 Supercar, driving that, because that's like, the pinnacle of Australian racing, right? I know we get the F1 over here and they come and visit, but this is ours, right? Like this is the pinnacle with respect to the motorbikes. I think that this is probably the V8 Supercars is the, So I'm trying not to upset the motorbike riders here, but so tell us, like, what was that experience like? Obviously it was a pretty cool thing, but how'd you go in it? Like,
it was a very, very cool experience. It's one of the things, like, supercars is actually one of the most watched sports in Australia. Like, it's up there on par with NRL. AFL is probably the number one when you look at numbers because of how many people follow that. But yeah, V8 Supercars, I think it's the third most watched sport in the country. So it's very, very cool to be able to drive one of those cars that so many people watch. And they're very different. They're lots of power, not much grip comparatively to say a Formula One car, for instance, because they're big, heavy cars. But yeah, very, very cool experience. We tested it down at the team's test track in Winton, which is in rural Victoria, and yeah, it went quite good. For my first time in the car, I was very, very close in terms of lap times to their main driver.
Wow!
And so the team was very, very happy, and they actually offered me a drive for this year in their development series car, to basically keep racing in a V8 and be able to do it. We had the sponsorship lined up for it, but unfortunately that got pulled out last minute because the company didn't have the best start to the year, and the company that was sponsoring me didn't have the best start, and so that's why I ended up in the V8 SuperUtes again this year, which has been great because obviously being able to get back in it, winning races, but yeah, the ultimate goal after testing that supercar was obviously to get back in that, and so that's what we're working hard towards now.
You mentioned a couple of times that things went bad with sponsorship and stuff, and I want to kind of use this as a segue to talk about the business side of racing, because like people that enjoy watching racing, they don't really see that. They don't see like how expensive these. You talk to anyone that has even a hobby car, just a car they drive on weekends, and you talk to them about how expensive they are. Performance cars are, performance tires, performance brakes, the maintenance to keep the engines running, the service, and using, the most expensive oils and fluids and you got to replace them because they get so much heat through them and all of it. So they don't realize how much it costs just to, and a lot of people that go to the track quite frequently, they effectively, develop a metric to measure what the cost per lap is or what the cost per outing is. And, and so let's get into the business side, because there's two things I want to explore here. One is like, how do you attract sponsors, and, what's a good fit?
Yeah.
But then also like the parts that maybe people wouldn't see or know about, where, maybe you're getting the rug pulled at you last minute. Like, what is that? What's that like as well? And one thing we won't do here is we won't talk bad about it, because, business at the end of the day, like they're just trying to look after their employees and whatever. But, it's hard because at the same time, this is what you do like professionally. And I know we'll talk about your business as well after that, but this is what you want to do professionally, and you're trying to achieve, a great, reach the highest levels effectively. And then you've got these roadblocks in front of you. So let's start with the first part, which is like, how do you attract sponsors? What's an ideal sponsorship look like? What different packages can people take? When people think sponsorship, they just usually think slap a sticker on a car, and but we're not talking about that stuff. We're talking about in more there's that too, but everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So the motorsport's very different to other sports. In other sports, to get to the top, I guess you can buy a pair of boots, go down to the park, kick a ball around and train as much as you want, sort of thing. In racing, as you mentioned, it's very different, because obviously the cars cost money to run. You need a big group of, it's a big team sport. Even though out on track I'm the driver and I'm in that by myself, it's actually a team sport. And so you've actually got a big group of people behind the scenes that prep the car, that are there for your pit stops, that are there to help get everything running, sort of thing. And so it's quite a lot of money involved, not only in running the car but in the whole team and making sure that you've got a good group of people around you as well. So when it comes to sponsorship, obviously as a driver you need to bring sponsorship to the table to be able to get into different forms of motorsport, and to be able to get up the ladder. It's quite weird, like even in Formula One, for instance, they worked out back when Lewis Hamilton was getting into Formula One, they spent something like £17 million through the junior categories just to get to Formula One.
Wow.
Now, supercars fortunately isn't quite that much, but it's still quite a lot of money to get there, and it just shows that every form of motorsport, until you get to the top, it's quite a long journey. And the cool thing
there's
about,
no guarantee of success either, right?
Exactly. So there's hundreds and thousands of drivers who all try it, and in the end for supercars, there's only 24 spots out there that there's going to be a driver in the seat, and so it's probably more about being a driver now than what it was probably 10, 15 years ago. You're more focused now on that business side of it. And so what a lot of people, like you said, what a lot of people think sponsorship is basically getting your sticker slapped onto the side of a car and basically that's it. And then, yep, cool, I've got my sticker running around, people can see it. And look, quite a lot of people watch it. So you get millions and millions of people watching on TV. Bathurst is one of the most watched events in Australia, like even on top of grand finals and all of the rest of it. Probably helps that it goes for the entire day, but yeah, it's got the most eyeballs on Bathurst, and they've won numerous awards over the years because of that. But it's one of those things where the way that I look at sponsorship is more about how can I actually help the sponsors get something out of it and get direct business out of it. And I part own my own company in property, so we've got a property investment company, and so I sort of draw what I've learnt from that in terms of what we look for when we're looking to get benefits from marketing and all the rest of it, and use that for my racing side of stuff, because in the end it needs to be beneficial for everyone involved. And so what I always look for is the win-win situation where everyone's winning from it. Obviously, from our point of view, we need the budget to be able to go racing. So that's what we look for in the sponsorship. But then to give back, what we do is we do things like, obviously we'd have the stickers on the car and whatnot, but that's sort of just a side part of it. So we do things like track days where we either put on a track day where our sponsors can bring their own cars out. I can hop in the passenger seat with them, let them drive their own cars around the track and have a cool experience that way, where a lot of people wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to normally drive around the track. Yeah,
let alone get some coaching advice from a professional driver, right?
Exactly right. So we do that. We do what we call hot laps, which is basically where I'm driving the car and our race car, so the actual race car that we're racing around the country, and we put a passenger seat in it, and they actually hop in the passenger seat, and I can take them for laps around the racetrack, that's pretty cool. Which is always very cool. Like we often put a camera facing back on people when they're in the passenger seat, and it's quite funny seeing it, because I don't think people realise how, number one, how quick it's going, but also how good the cars stop. And so when you hit the brakes, you always see their face go flying forward. And so it's cool to be able to give that sort of experience. They're the sort of experiences that you can't really buy them. They're there, and they make you feel good. They're good for business partnerships to give to relationship building and all the rest of it. But that's where a lot of most teams do that sort of stuff. I try and take it to that next step and really try and find ways where we can actually generate business for companies. So look, depending on what the company is different things. So for instance, my main partner at the moment is AC Delco. So we've been helping them. They're currently going through a major rebrand where they're opening up service centres throughout Australia. And so we're actually, part of what I do is actually helping them to engage and talk with potential franchise owners. And so that's part of what my role in that is to be available for appearances when they do have openings, have my car there. So have the race car there for openings at their grand opening events, and also just annual events as well. But then also getting involved in the discussions and going, all right, well, let's bring me along to your discussions, and then we'll try and look at what we can help them achieve through what we're doing with racing side of it. Now, with AC Delco, we've got obviously direct connection because it's in car racing. But we've also got other partners that have joined us previously who have no correlation with car racing at all. And with them, what we look at doing is obviously helping to get people on who we can bring them out, have a cool environment where they can bring them out to the racetrack, go to them in corporate hospitality or whatever it might be, and do some engagement in terms of
people love building. Corporate hospitality,
Exactly right.
They really do. You can get, I think from a partnerships perspective, you take someone to whatever it is, a race day, a football game or whatever, and just because it is such a small group that you can take. They really feel valued. And they are effective. Like that's the one thing I've seen. They definitely are effective. I know people who have wooed me with corporate hospitality, not because I haven't already made the decision. I've already made the decision, exactly. but it's like, wow, that was nice of them. And it just makes it that little bit nicer to deal with. Them. In some cases, you do it just for relationship management, which is usually, when I get invited, it's like, thank you for your business. Let me do this to return serve, you know, because we appreciate your business.
Yeah.
But the business side is, it's hard. Like, long time ago in my previous business, we sponsored the first sponsorship was, it was an 86 Cup car. And it was just like a sticker on the side, and it was like, I don't know, maybe 10 grand or something like that. And then I don't remember, right? So I'm just pulling numbers out, but then, you know, the next year, like, we want to do this bigger, better. We've got to make improvements to the car. We got to do this. We got to do that. And then it's like, but we'll wrap the whole car. We'll make it look Hulk green, because that was the color. It was black and green for that business. And that was like a much larger investment. It was about 5 times that from memory. And then it's like, as obviously the stakes get higher, and as the level gets higher, the sponsorships become more and more and more. But there are different levels, right, for all kinds of budgets. So maybe we can touch on that, because I know that, like, you don't necessarily have to have the biggest bank, but bank account to be part of it. But there is usually a good balance you can get from, like in terms of bang for buck. So like, you don't have to say a dollar amount. That's obviously not appropriate. But, like, would you say, like, there's packages available for, like, small businesses, medium, 100%. And then large? And what are some things that businesses can look to get back from it? You know, obviously, if it's directly related to automotive, it makes total sense, right? You've got people that are interested in cars, that work on cars, that love cars, that spend money on cars. Makes sense, automotive. You know, like, I'm not sure if still, but like the super cheap auto, like, you know,
correct.
Makes so much sense, right? I used to work there. That's why I use that name. When I was 15 to 17, in that range, I was working at Super Cheap Auto, and I loved it. It was awesome. But, like, that's easy to make the connection. What about some other businesses that you kind of work with, where you feel like you've been able to deliver value to them, and they aren't necessarily just automotive or racing?
Definitely. So I've worked with a number of companies in finance sector, insurance sector, outsourcing. We've got one on at the moment that's in that, which is obviously as far from motor racing as you can get, I guess. And so what we do with them is all those things that I mentioned already, with the partnership building and all the rest of it. But it's also creating a network. And so what we do is we've got our own groups and everything where our sponsors can actually connect with each other. So
that's great.
It's all about those networks and building those relationships. And so we open the door for everyone to basically have a group chat. And then anyone who wants to get in touch with anybody else, they either come to me or they can just go directly to them. Obviously, as long as everyone's all right to have their details on there, then we let that happen. If not, then we just say, well, look, these guys are part of the group. If you want to get in touch with them, just come through me and we can go do that. So that's helped a lot of businesses to create a lot of direct business. And that's where coming back to what I was saying earlier about what I try and do is really help businesses to actually get direct business from it. And so we've helped a number of companies to create some really, really big deals between them. One of the finance companies actually hooked up with the TV company and basically looked after all of their personal finances and whatnot for their clients. And so that's a relationship that they've built and still have going to this day. And so that's the type of direct relationships that we create. We also, on the outsourcing side of it, so with those guys, just because it's one that I'm literally working on right now, so we actually can help to give them a point of difference when they're at their own events. So they're going to be at a few different events over the next year or so in their own industry. And as you know, when you go to these expos or events, pretty much everything looks pretty much the same. And so what we do is we're actually helping them to provide a point of difference and to get more people around their stand. And so we're going to be having simulators out at their event, and then giving prizes away to do the racing from that. And so it's something that allows them to be able to have that point of difference, get people there. And as you know, you guys have the simulator at your place. As you know,
I'll tell you some stories about events and the way we do events, because I think you're 100% spot on there. But as you know, with simulators,
so with simulators, there's a lot of waiting around while people are watching you and laughing at your crash and whatnot. And so it's a cool environment for us. Like the way that I'd put it to them and the way that it's been working is you've got all these people standing around watching, having a laugh, obviously at whoever's in the seat's expense, but they're all talking to each other at the same time.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
so
You
it's
build
another way to build those relationships, but also get talking to people about your business while you're there, which in the end is why you go to those sorts of events.
And find out why they're there in the first place. Like
Exactly.
people go to these events, and I see it because we sponsor a bunch of industry events.
Yeah.
Because we get great value out of it.
Yeah.
You know, because like we're going there, it's our target audience. The people that are there to be not to be exhibitors, like the actual people that are paying for a ticket to attend the conference, as an example, they're trying to solve. They're there to learn, or they're there to try and solve problems in their existing business. So if you're not trying to shove your product down people's throat, and you're actually trying to listen to see what their pain points are, it's amazing how much more seamless the transaction is. Like, hey, you know, tell me about your business. Oh yeah, I mostly do residential mortgages or whatever. Okay, yeah, you know, and you know, a few questions later, they tell you they don't really do asset finance. So like, great, it's what we do, you know. And you know, let me tell you about this technology that we have that we can put it on your website. It'll help you generate home loan leads, and then you get to keep them. And if they're asset finance, we'll do them for you, and we'll pay you the commission for it. And so when you're not approaching it from like, oh, here's what I do, and you know, do you want it? It's like, it's so much easier.
Oh, 100%. It's amazing what happens when you listen and ask questions. It gets you so much further.
You know, we do events very differently. We do sponsor those types of events because, like, you know, that's the easiest way to get in front of a large audience. That's the type of client you're looking for. But we put pressure this year on changing the way that events are done, and I'm starting to see some people like want to do different things. So it's working. We did a track day. And at the time we had Harry Hayek from RCD Motorsports, who's a driving coach, like basically run the track day. We did have a Lotus lined up that was meant to be the car everyone was driving, and then like 2 weeks before the event, it crashed in racing. So things can go wrong.
They can.
It's another reason why you need sponsorship dollars, because the cars can get damaged. Someone can clip you. You can end up in a wall. You can miscalculate a corner. Tires a little more slippery because of the heat, or you know, or the lack thereof. But yeah, so we brought our partners, most of which were lenders and other referral strategic partners, and we just said, forget about trying to sell today. Let's just do this experience. Let's have a great day together, and we'll all be better for it.
Yeah, definitely.
And people, you know, do deals out of it and make better relationships with other lenders. And this lender now talks to that lender, and they're helping each other with a problem they're trying to solve. And everyone got stuff out of it. But the amount of people that were upset that I didn't invite them because they're like, that looked so awesome. And it was. In the end, what we ended up doing is just putting semi-slicks on my performance model Tesla. I know it's not a race car. I know all the ICE, you know, real enthusiasts are yelling at me now. But it was like a last minute solution. And the good thing about that car is it's way faster than, you know, in a straight line than you know, nearly any car, right? And so it gave people the G-force on acceleration, and we put semi-slicks on it, and it's already got Brembos. So, you know, we just had to manage the heat, and it was pretty good.
It's nice and quiet, so you can talk while you're in there.
It was quiet. That's the next part. What we did was we made people go around the track, and at Luddenham, the lap's about a minute. You know, it should be faster, but these are not professional drivers. And we made them do their 60-second pitch. Right. Nice. And that's a tradition on this podcast. So we still got a while before we wrap up. But before you go, I'm going to get you to do a 60-second pitch on, I might get you to do it on both actually, why someone should sponsor and get involved. And then also tell us about your property business as well.
Cool.
So maybe 30 seconds a pop.
That works.
But so we made them do a 60-second pitch, and they were on camera, and as they're flying around corners, and it was fun. And everybody has asked me, like, when are we doing the next one? You know? And so that's what an event should be. Like, obviously, did they learn anything? Not about the industry, but they definitely learned a really good life skill. They've got professional race drive coaching.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm hoping at some point that they'll be able to use some of those tips, or maybe it'll save them from an accident or clean up a messy situation in a car. Someone pulls out, they can handle it, right? So they didn't learn anything about finance that day, really.
Yeah.
But it was a relationship building thing, and it was a networking thing. And for us, it's like, the networking part is very important in business.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's why I'm bringing it up again, because like, really, the one thing, when I was younger, I never used to go to networking events. I was very, very socially, I had a lot of social anxiety. I was like, that's not me. I'm an introverted person.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a lot better at public speaking and, networking events and all of it. But I wasn't like that. And so a lot of people think, okay, well, I'm not like that, so I can never be that way.
Yeah.
Right. But it is something that it's like the same thing with leg day. If you train that muscle over and over again, you get progress, you get gains, you get all that.
Yeah.
So, I went from not going to the events at all. Then I went to, the next step was I'd go to them, but I'd basically find the first person I half knew or knew, and I'd just wait in the corner with them for the rest of the night and talk to them basically only.
Yeah.
Then some people would come and talk to me or whatever. And I just got better and better, and I kept doing it. But I built the network years and years ago, and it has served me so well in this business and the last business and basically in life. It's served me well. So that would be like something, whether you're a professional race driver, an aspiring one, start building your network, or a businessman, doesn't matter what you do, start building your network, or at least this is me saying what I think you should do. Yeah. Start building your network long before you need it, because 100%. Then you can tap into those relationships for whatever 100%. It is that you need. And it's not about, when I say building your network, it's not just about shaking hands and collecting a business card.
No.
It's about finding how you can add value to that person.
Yeah.
Because, they'll then want to reciprocate.
Exactly.
And so, you can spend time, giving them advice or giving them whatever it is that they need help with, or helping them move place, whatever it is. Like, I want to help. I'm here. If you need anything, reach out to me. And then in the future, not that you'll be keeping score, but they will feel like they owe you one. Yeah. And then whether it's, some help that you need, they'll come running. And
exactly right.
So the second side of business, let's call this the darker side of business, is sometimes things can go bad. You go over budget.
Yeah.
More problems with the car than you were expecting or forecasting.
Yeah.
Sponsors pull money, or through no fault of your own.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily you, because but someone might say something that upsets a sponsor in the 21st century now. There's like people getting cancelled and all the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
But let's touch on that, because like it's a delicate thing. You've got to not only represent your own personal brand, you've got to represent the shop, like the workshop that the racing team that you're representing, but also the sponsors. So, and those sponsors as well, may hang you out to dry at some point if you do the wrong thing. Yeah. But they expect you to do the absolute right thing by them all the time. Yeah. They may hang you out to dry through no fault of your own too, but they expect you to be. Yeah. So let's talk about that, because I know you mentioned a couple of times that sponsors pulled money. One was COVID, another one was because, their business wasn't, doing too well or whatever. But these things can happen.
100%. Yeah.
How do you, firstly, how are you so resilient? Because that's goddamn, that must be frustrating.
Yeah.
And secondly, like, what are some things that you do to try and mitigate that? Because, you've got a car, you've got a set budget, you know what dollars are coming in, but then something might go wrong with the car that was not forecasted. So
100%. So like you said, there's things go wrong all the time for no matter what you're doing in life, whether it's racing cars or doing anything. So it's one of those things where, like I said, when COVID hit, that was probably the big one. We were sort of on that upward trajectory, and COVID hit. And look, for me, through getting through that one, it was probably a little easier getting through that one, because I'm a very big believer in taken a step back and just been grateful for what you've got. And so for me, obviously, I wanted to make that next step into supercars, and I was like, oh, I've got it all sorted, it's all ready to go, and then to have it ripped out of you last minute, you're just obviously devastated, because it's something that you've worked, like I've worked pretty much my whole life towards it, and to finally get within reach of it and then have it pulled away was quite gut wrenching. And so for me, at first, I was very, very upset, disappointed. But again, I do what I normally do and took a step back and went, well, hang on a minute, like I'm still in a pretty good position. There's a lot worse happening in the world right now, particularly through COVID, as we all know. And so getting through that one was just about taking that step back and going, all right, let's reset, do what we can with what we've got now. And then that's when we've then gone on this new path with the SuperUtes and whatnot. Then this year, like we said, this year we're meant to be back in it again. And for different reasons, again, like we said, basically the company just didn't, basically they were on a good trajectory. They had made a lot of money in the past few years and wanted to expand even more. Basically they were waiting on a few things to happen externally. They didn't happen. And then that's why they had to pull back on what they're going to be doing. I've still got, it's funny that you mentioned relationship building and networks and everything. I've still got a great relationship with them. And we're still in the talks about doing things further, but it's obviously disappointing when it happens, but you, again, just try and take that step back and look at the whole big picture and go, all right, well, like you mentioned before, they're in a business themselves. Like they've still got people to look after, employers, all the rest of it. And so it's, you kind of understand it from that side of thing. Obviously it's not ideal from what I was wanting to do, but you see it from that side of thing. One thing that I've learned from all of that, and that I'm now starting to do, probably a little bit too late, is when I'm getting things sorted, is not, I guess, putting all my eggs in one basket. And so it's funny that you mentioned network building. That's probably another thing that you always go through life and wish you knew things earlier. So I don't regret any of it, but it's just something that would have been good to know and understand and be a bit better at earlier, is building those networks. A lot of the racing sponsorship side of it comes from those networks that you build. And that's why when I set up with my sponsors now, that's why I've got the networking groups, because they all talk to each other. So all my sponsors, no one's hiding. I don't have any conflicting sponsors, which is always good. But I make sure that they're all networking together, talking together, because the more business that I can create for them, then the more they're going to be talking, the more they're going to want to step up that involvement the following year. And then I'm not just putting all my eggs in that one sponsor and going, all right, well, this is my sponsor, I'm only going to focus on them, because if something happens to them and they pull out, then you're left with nothing. And so that's one big thing that we've changed over the last couple of years, is really creating that network and really creating an atmosphere where people want to be involved, because not just because they've got a sticker on the car or they're involved in racing or the hot laps or any of that, like that's all cool stuff, but they're doing it because they know that they can actually generate business out of it as well. And so it's all,
that's really cool.
Like you said, it's not, you're not doing it, like obviously for me, I'm doing it to help them make business, because if they're doing good in business, then they're going to be able to keep continuing with us and see an actual tangible benefit from it, not just the benefit that sort of, oh yeah, I think it's doing the right thing. It's actually a tangible benefit that they're actually generating business from.
A lot of businesses are scared that you can't do things to track, but I know through our sponsorship experiences, for example, with the Penrith Panthers, right? We had a unique link for things that we did that were digital based, right? So we were able to track all of the engagements. We were able to track, the follower increases, the transactions that customers came to our website through those channels, and all those kinds of things. So there are in the new world, you don't have to just rely on, finger in the air hoping for the best. You can really put data and science around, whether or not that it's performing.
100%.
I want to ask you, like, on that marketing side, right? Like, who do you partner with someone to kind of help you? Like, how do you make yourself, how do you attract businesses to come and approach you, I guess? Like, how do you become the Lewis Hamilton of market? Like in terms of, if you said, who's a marketable F1 driver, right? Lewis Hamilton's pretty marketable guy. There's a lot of pretty marketable guys there. For example, someone like Max Verstappen, he's got a very strong personality. Known as, a bit crazy, very high, like takes a lot of risks. but still very marketable.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because you know that he's going to be like performance wise, you know, he's going to be there or thereabouts, but also, you know, he's going to be making headlines, whatever he does.
Yeah,
so
exactly right.
The cameras are going to be on him.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you've got badges or stickers or whatever, you know, ultimately they're going to be on your brand as well. So,
so look, it's one of those things where when you're looking at it from a being marketable point of view with everyone, it's like I mentioned before, and like what you mentioned is in terms of getting businesses come to you, it all comes back to that networking side of things. And so that's for me is the big thing, is the whole networks that you create, and doing, like you said, like not doing it to directly get that from someone. Like I could be speaking to someone just in the street just about what they do, and then just being nice and genuine to people, you then get people come to you from that. And so that's how actually I've picked up a couple of my sponsors, literally just from networks that I wasn't talking to them about sponsors or anything like that, just being myself, being genuine with people. And then literally a week later after I've met them, they've sent me a text or got on the phone to me and said, I've got this mate of mine who actually is wanting to get involved in racing, and do you want to have a chat with them? And so I've actually got a couple of my sponsors been through that side of things as well. And so it's all about that networking, but networking in the right way, like what you mentioned before and you touched on with the whole, you're not doing it to get something directly out of it.
Yeah,
but
right.
if you're genuine, you're yourself, you're not there for any other.
People deal with people.
Exactly.
Like, you know, especially for what you're doing and even what we do, right? They're not dealing with Loan Options AI because, you know, of any other reason other than, you know, at the end of the day, the technology makes their life easy, and our people are going to do a good job.
Yeah.
You know, if our people are rude, they're not going to deal with us.
Exactly.
They're not dealing with us like because we have, you know, some secret recipe magic sauce. It's all like speed and service. Yeah. And in racing, it's not different. It's not that different. It's like speed. Yeah. You know, albeit you're chasing tenths of a second here and there. You know, so. But service is, you know, what the sponsors want back, you know, like, you know, they want you to be responsive. They want you to help, you know, where you can help and be generous with your time. And that's it, speed and service.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is you can be one of the quickest guys on the track, but if you're rude and arrogant and everything when you come off the track, then nobody's going to want to know about you. And nobody's going to want to back you or get behind you or sponsor you. It's about just being yourself really. And and getting that name out there through that way. There is
some brand reputation risk associated with if you're sponsoring someone who might be a little volatile, right?
Yes.
So I'm trying to think of some good examples, but let's say you were sponsoring, you know, let's use the best example I can think of is like Kobe Covington from the UFC.
Yep.
Very controversial guy.
Yeah.
He plays a heel. From all accounts, he's actually a nice guy in person when the cameras are off.
Yeah.
But to the camera, like if you're a brand, who knows what that bloke's going to say?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You might say something that comes or gets misconstrued as being racist or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you're like, God, my brand's associated with that bloke.
Yeah.
So there is a fine line there, right?
There is.
You want somebody who's not afraid to speak to the camera and is going to maybe, you know, toe that line a little bit to get a lot of eyeballs, but you also don't want somebody who's going to say the wrong thing and upset
and
all the fans.
A lot of it comes down to the PR team and everyone behind them as well, is making sure that you're letting them be themselves and letting them get to that point. But then as soon as they're getting close to that line, then you need to kind of help them to come in. And so I do most of my stuff myself, but I do have a team behind me that when it comes to looking after sponsors on race weekends that I've got that come out and help with all of that. And the main reason for that is similar, but in a different way, is obviously when I'm on track, I want to be able to perform as best as I can. But while I'm on track, I also want my sponsors and everyone to be looked after. And so I can't be doing both things. And so
literally can't.
Exactly. You literally can't be doing it. And so that's why I make sure that I've got a good team behind me that at the track is actually able to service the sponsors and make sure that everyone's being looked after, make sure that they're getting what they want, going over and above, and sort of it's always about that whole promising down here but delivering up here sort of thing. And so that's what I make sure happens. And obviously I'm involved in it because it's my brand, but it's making sure that that's all in place so that while I'm at the track I can be performing at the top level and getting my sponsors the level of service that they need to, like I said, not only have that branding, have the feel good factor, all the rest of it, but getting that direct business from it as well is important.
So the next thing I want to talk about is about high performance, right? So I really want to talk about high performance with you because like people just go, okay, racing, yeah, fast, whatever. Yeah. But we're talking about like the difference between first and last, like, you know, it might be seconds, but the difference between the sort of the top 10 is probably tenths of a second, right? Yeah. So what is it that you do to ensure that you're performing at your absolute best? Do you have like a routine? Do you have a certain amount of sleep you need? Do you a certain amount of what are the and even if some of them are superstition, who cares? Just tell us about that.
Yeah. So I've got a number of processes. So away from the track in between, I'm doing a fair bit of fitness training. So like you mentioned, it's a lot of people don't associate car racing with being fit, but it's with the heats that you get in there, with the G-forces that you're pulling, it's actually quite hard on the body. And so we do a lot of fitness training around the core, around heat training, so that going in the sauna, all that sort of stuff. But then also while you're in the sauna, it's not just a matter of just sitting in there and going, yep, I'm getting acclimatized to the heat. It's also doing things that are like mentally training you while you're in there. And so we do a lot of that sort of stuff where I would like do like a mental quiz that's like, I got an app basically that helps me, and it's basically got all these quizzes that I can go through, and I do that before I'm in the heat. Then I go in the heat.
I know why you do that, and let me explain. I don't deal very well with heat. I told you about the time in the go-kart. But just in general, I run hot. So my body's like always hot. I'm one of those guys that like wears a t-shirt and shorts in winter. Like I'm just like that. And so anyway, the point I'm getting to here is like whenever I get hot to the point where I'm sweaty or whatever, the one thing, and it's the same for other people too, it's not just me, your decision-making gets so bad. You know, you get so flustered, you get like, you can't deal with the heat. Like my decision-making when I'm really hot, like if I was in a situation where I'm racing or whatever, I would be making terrible decisions when we know how important that is. So that kind of mental examination, keeping you sharp, keeping you being able to, you know, that I think that's a great way to train that. Because like for me, I'm just like, I need to cool down ASAP. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to think. I can't think. But and
it's one of those things, like I said, it's so important with what we're doing because a split decision that's the wrong way and you crashed in the wall. It's not as simple as, I made a mistake and I missed that pass.
The race is over.
You're done. And as we mentioned before, it costs a lot of money. If you're in the war, you've obviously damaged the car, and there's a lot of money sitting there to repair it as well. And so that's why you're doing it, is so that you can be at the top of your game. And so that's what I find. One of the things that I do, like I said, we do a lot of that side of it. I really like the psychological side of sport. I like pretty much any sport that you can think of. And one of the main reasons is because every single sport's got its own different psychological aspect to it. And you can relate that back to business as well, because even in business, there's that psychological part of it where you need to be at the top of your game if you're in a meeting or whatever it might be. And split decisions, like people, you see it all the time where people fold under pressure because they're just, mind goes blank and like freeze and they don't know what to do. And so the more that you can put your mind and your body, but mainly your mind, under those circumstances where you're really testing it in extreme conditions, the better you're going to be able to make those quick decisions. And so that's what we're doing around that heat side of it. And then obviously with all the rest of it, it's making sure that I've got my own simulator at home, and so I'm on that quite a bit, preparing.
By the way, you're absolutely disqualified from competing. You can definitely have a go on there, but I reckon it's going to be so unfair. There's going to be such a big gap between you and the next person. I'm just kidding. We'll have fun. Maybe what we should do is maybe if anyone can get within a certain distance of your time, we give them a prize.
Yeah, that would be good.
That would be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
So I'll think
we'll
on
have to
that.
have a think of it.
If you think of some ideas there, we'll do that. That'll be fun because it'd be good to see what a professional race driver can do that. And we'll pick a track and a car, and then I'm going to spend the next maybe 5 years trying to beat it.
You will come into the office and just see you doing laps around on the simulator.
So, but sorry to hijack that. But so you got a simulator?
Yeah, so I got the simulator, so I'm on that quite often leading up to a race as well, just to make sure that we're working on different things. And look, as you know, like the simulator, it's not like you're actually driving. Like it's close, but it's still not the actual
It's
things.
not the same, yeah.
So what I focus on that again is that more the psychological part of it, and doing lots of laps, making sure that you can hit your markers every single lap. Even though it's on a simulator, it's still that same mental capacity to be able to sustain a long period of that performance and the focus. And so we do that. I also make sure I'm focusing on different aspects of my driving technique, because even though, again, you're not feeling it and everything, you've still got pedals, you've still got a steering wheel. So in terms of technique, you can really focus on the little 1%ers as well. So yeah, we do that. We do what we call skid pan sessions as well. So we work with guys out at Eastern Creek Driving Solutions. The guy who runs that, James Short, we do a lot of driver coaching with him, where we get out on the skid pan with him, and just about all the 1%ers. And so what we're doing is just really making sure that all the small techniques, that they're the basics. That's what we're focusing on. And a lot of the thing why I started doing that, so I started doing that halfway through 2019, the year that we won the 86 Toyota 86 Championship. It's sort of, when you look at every sport, no matter how good someone is, they've always got a coach.
Yeah.
And motorsport is very, very different. For whatever reason, drivers just don't tend to have coaches that are just focused purely on the driving side of it. And so for me, that kind of puts you into that aspect where it's like, all right, well, you've now got a coach that's looking at you, examining you and seeing what you're doing and giving you small tips on those 1%ers. And it really makes a difference when it comes to getting out on track and being able to execute from the word go and throughout the whole entire race weekend.
Yeah, that's cool. And, what was the one thing that is it the coaching? What's the one thing that because you when you were telling me your story, you had finished 10th, finished 11th, finished 5th, what was the one thing that you think you're on a streak now, mate? You're red hot. You're absolutely red hot. Maybe it's not one thing. Maybe it's all the 1%ers. But what was the thing? Mindset change. What was it that took you from being, a high performer to being at the top?
Yeah, I think it's hard to put it down to one thing. I think you nailed it when you said it's probably a lot of the 1%ers, because I think it is just
usually
all
the
the
case.
1%ers.
Yeah.
And just being disciplined. It's all good to, and I guess this is something that relates back to business as well, is it's all good to say, yep, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and you can plan out everything and have all the plans there. But if you're just talking about it, you're not actually doing it, you're not disciplined to do it, not just do it once, but do it every single time you need to be doing it, then you're not going to get the results. And so for me, it's a lot of the little 1%ers. It's the coaching, it's the fitness training, it's the psychological side of it, it's the leading up to race events. I make sure I've got the right hydration program going and all that sort of stuff. And so they're all 1%ers that you can't just go to someone and go, I'll do that, and they're going to go from being here to up here. It's doing that combination of it, but then also that discipline, because for me, the discipline is, yes, you're doing it all, but it's also a mindset as well, that if you're disciplined enough to do all those 1%ers, then you're disciplined enough to be able to go and perform at the highest level when you do it. And so it's about that mindset shift is probably, if I was to put it down to one thing, it would be that discipline and that mindset shift, really. So
that's awesome. And probably want to get you to talk a little bit about, because thing I really respect about you is you're not just talking about the business side, and you really don't have an idea or a clue about it. You actually have a partner in a business yourself as well. Yep. So let's hear a bit more about that. You mentioned it was in property investment, but love to hear more.
Yeah, so we run a company called Maven Property, and basically we help people to invest in properties. So we're kind of like a buyer's agent in a way.
Agent, yeah. Buyer's advocate.
Yeah, exactly. So we go around and we do all the research. We don't focus. So a lot of companies like us tend to focus on particular developments or always brand new or whatever it might be. We've got a very, very different model where basically we used to work with another company. They did things a little bit too typical of investment companies, where you can just tell they weren't in it for the client. It was just, all right, how can we get the biggest commissions and work their way through that way? We completely reverse engineer it. So what I mean by that is the first time that we ever see clients is all about educating them. So we make sure that we educate them. We're not charging them for any of that. We educate them through the whole process and go, all right, well, this is where we're at. we take a snapshot of where they're at right now and go, all right, well, what are your goals? And we really go down to, all right, what do you want to get out of this? And it's much like what you spoke about earlier with when you're talking to people at those events about the business side of it. For us, it's very similar when you're talking to clients, because we want to understand, all right, well, why are you wanting to invest? And more often than not, so a lot of our clients, we don't do marketing or anything like that. A lot of our clients come from referral partners. And so a lot of the time the response that we get is, oh, because my accountant told me to, or because my broker told me to, or my financial planner told me to. And it's like, well, all right, let's dig a little bit deeper into this, because we want you to have an actual reason to be investing. Like, you don't just do it because someone told you to. You need to actually understand why. And so we make sure that people understand why, and then once we know why they want to invest and what their end goal is, then we sort of work backwards from that and find, all right, what's the right property for them. And then obviously through that process, we plug in if they've got a broker that they're speaking to, or financial broker, whatever it might be, we make sure that we're obviously putting them in the conversation too, because we need to understand what they can borrow and whatnot. But it's just all about getting that end goal. And once we understand what their end goal is, we can then work backwards from there and go, all right, well, this is the type of property that we need to go out and find.
No, that's really cool, mate. I think like that part, having that knowledge makes you understand exactly what a potential sponsor, screwed that up. A business that potentially wants to sponsor, gives you that understanding, and then you can connect with them at that level. They're much more likely to deal with someone who actually understands the nitty gritty of a business and running it, and how hard it is to get clients and keep clients and all of it, right? So
exactly right.
But yeah, what's the roadmap from here look like? You know, you've obviously got some upcoming. What's the roadmap from here look like? I'll let you.
So basically, from the racing side of things, where obviously supercars there's an option there to go into that. So for me right now, it's about building those networks, where we're expanding our networks and getting pretty close to getting things sorted for next year to be racing in Supercars Development Series. So that's been, obviously, as I've mentioned, it's been a long road to get there. So, but hopefully we can do that. We've also, though, recently I've been given some opportunities overseas as well. And so we're starting to explore those opportunities too. So there's some opportunities to go and race in the US in certain categories over there. And so that's early days, but I've had a few teams. The cool thing about that is I actually had teams contacting me about it. And so there's, some big opportunities that we're starting to work on for that. Again, it comes down to budgets and sponsors and side of things, but the fact that the teams have got onto me, it's a different ball game over there. There's just so many people over there.
Bigger market,
huge.
Their economy is huge.
Oh, it's ridiculous. So it's really since we've started the conversations, I've probably been talking to them since would have been about July. But the conversations have progressed quite well, and it's just,
if you're an Aussie business listening to this, keep this man in our country. Don't give him, ship him off to the US. They'll claim him as theirs. Let's keep him in Australia.
No, we'll definitely keep the Aussie thing going, even if we're over there. So it's So look, there's some opportunities over there, but my main thing is obviously trying to get into supercars. I've got some really good opportunities with main supercar teams who want me to be driving with them. So just about keeping doing what we're doing, building our networks, and getting the budget sorted to take those next steps.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what about personal goals, mate? You got you mentioned you were married. You got goals in your personal life as well. That you don't have to discuss them if you don't want to.
That's all right. So I'm married. Been married for almost 5 years now. So we're starting to talk about having kids and whatnot. So I'm sure that'll fit into the picture somewhere quite soon. So it's so that's all happening as well, and so that obviously factors into what I'm looking at from a personal racing point of view as well. So because obviously once you got family and whatnot, it then starts to take a bigger picture look at everything that you're doing. So it's so now there's definitely talks of that starting to happen now.
Awesome, man. That's great to hear for you. Like, just listening, like at the start of the conversation, we're talking about, if they didn't operate, you got 2 weeks to live. Now you're talking about like having a family of your own. Like,
Yeah.
life is just incredible, eh?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And yeah, look, I think your attitude is great in terms of counting your blessings and being grateful for everything. I think all of us, myself included, probably don't do that enough. You know? So, but yeah, before we wrap up, I'd love to see, is there anything else you want to cover or think we should cover? Otherwise, I'm going to put you through your 60-second pitch.
I think we've gone through most of it. Yeah. So I'll be put on the spot for a 60-second pitch.
All right, awesome. Let's do that then. So let's assume business owners are listening, and you need to give your 60-second pitch about why they should sponsor, ultimately why they should sponsor you, but the team as well.
Yeah, definitely. So look, I've obviously got a great story behind us. A lot of what I'm doing, the purpose of it is for a bigger picture with Starlight Foundation, and to be able to give back more to them. But like I said, given my experience in business and the way that we go about our relationships and our partnerships, we're able to, what I'm trying, I guess, to give back to people is to really create tangible business relationships. And so the goal, I guess, for me getting a sponsor on board is more about, all right, what can we do for you? And that's the key, is to really go into there of, right, what do you want out of this? And then we're able to work it backwards from there and go, all right, this is where we want to get to. We want to get X amount of sales or X amount of this, and then really create a partnership around that. So more than just a sticker on the car or the good times in the hot laps or anything like that. It's more about creating those networks for my sponsors and for whoever wants to come on board, creating those networks and really using that to create direct business back into the company so they can actually have a tangible benefit from it.
Awesome, mate. That's great. And I'm gonna get you to do the pitch for Maven Property as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so Maven Property, obviously, we're different to a lot of investment companies. We've set ourselves up purposely to be different. It's what we're doing is we're in it for the client, and so for us, it's more about what clients want out of it, what their end goal is, and then making sure that we're then selecting the right property to fit into that, not the other way around like most people do, which is, here's a property, you can buy this because you've got the money for it. It's more about how can the property is more of a tool for the client to get to where they want to be rather than a direct property. And so Maven Property is obviously all about making sure that we're helping our clients to build their wealth through that tool, which is property investment.
Awesome, mate. Absolute pleasure. You are a gentleman, and it's a pleasure to sit here and listen to your story.
Thank you.
And just go through it all. It's you haven't chosen the easiest career path, let me say, mate. Sounds really, really hard, and I hope people listening appreciate just how much work's involved in, turning up on race day and kicking some goals. So, yeah, well done to you, mate. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.